This week, we travel back to 1915 with the birth of a National Masonic Research Society. That's right, the Builder magazine. We'll read from Brother Joseph Fort Newton, who lays out the mission of this new organization. Then we'll hear from illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison in a segment all about reaching the East and what happens when we leave. Are we valued anymore? Do people still need us? Where can we find where we fit in after the East? We'll have an all-new segment from Brother Matt Gallagher when he talks about the 5 orders in architecture in this awesome segment based on practical masonry. All this and more in this episode of Whence Came You. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back. This is episode number 518. Right away, I want to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners, those people who we cannot make this program without, thanks to their financial support and bringing Masonic education to everyone interested in the royal art. If you listen every single week and you're thinking, how can I assist this program? There are options. You can sign up to be a fellow contributor or a producer, or even give a one-time gift, whether it's 50 cents or $5. All of it helps, and it goes right back into the production of this show and the spreading of Masonic education around the world. To learn more, go to the website, wcypodcast.com, click on Support the Show, or you can check out any number of the things we've got in the shop, which includes our producer's pin. We have a journal and pen combo, Max Heindel's Ancient and Modern Initiation Special Edition, which has been prepared by my own hand, and we've got all the original illustrations within the book, which was initially published back in 1909, and we actually read the entire book in this show. So if you're looking to show some support that way and you want to grab a copy of that autographed, I can certainly help you out with that. We also have the Master's Word Annotated edition by myself and Brother John Ruark. It's a fantastic edition of the book and is probably one of the best foundational books in understanding the breadth of the philosophy of Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and even New Ageism. If you're out there and you're looking for answers in how to get your lodge back on track. Now, there are great books out there like Laudable Pursuit, which is available as an audiobook if you wanted to check that out also, by the Knights of the North. But if you're looking for that next step, maybe you want to charter a new lodge. Sounds like a lot of work, but you know what? It kind of isn't. And I'll take you through the entire process if you pick up that book, How to Charter a Lodge, a no-nonsense, unsanctioned guide. In it is some great content by various Freemasons from all around the world, including Grandmaster, soon-to-be past Grandmaster actually, Brother Bob Davis. We've got articles from Kristen Wilson Slack in there, as well as many other brothers who have unique insights. So if you're looking to do that, we take you through it in this great way. And you can pick up a copy right there, autographed at wcypodcast.com. Also, it's business time, the time-tested and Grand Lodge officers who've raved about it, approved, really great guide to starting some positive changes in the way we run Freemasonry. All that right there at the website. My thanks to everybody out there who considers grabbing something or helping us out. Now in the news, what is going on in the news? Well, we've got a couple great, awesome things happening. I just found out that I'll have an article published in the Rocky Mountain Mason in the next edition, so I'm excited about that. If you're interested in the Rocky Mountain Mason magazine, I want you to head on over to RockyMountainMason.com and check out the magazine and, of course, the great podcast that's put out there by Brother Ben Williams, the ever-busy man himself. And if you're one of those esoteric inclined individuals, then you're going to want to check out the Esoteric Mason, which is another magazine that Brother Ben puts out through Laughing Lion Publications. I've got a little column in there about the paranormal, if you're interested. That magazine comes out just a couple times a year, but is a fantastic resource. Next up, Double Eagle Con. What in the world is that? Well, imagine one of these great conventions that we're always talking about, Masonic cons and the like, but in this case, Scottish Rite only. That's right. At the Valley of Chicago, Scottish Rite, we are going to hold something we're calling Double Eagle Con on December 18th. Tickets are $90, but what you get is 9 speakers continental breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the speakers start at 8 a.m. on Saturday. We've got Michael R. Pohl, Joseph Wages, Roberto Sanchez, Steve Harrison, Chuck Dunning, Brent Morris, Bob Davis, and Darren Laners, and Mr. Jeffrey Croteau, the director of the Library and Archives for the Scottish Rite Museum in Lexington, Massachusetts. Those early bird tickets, again, are $90, but after November 30th, they're going to be $120. So you're going to want to pick those up sooner than later, and I hope you guys all consider coming. This is the event to come to in 2021. As we come to a close, December 18th. I know it's December, it's Chicago, and people have concerns, but I'll tell you this. If you're into education, it's worth the trek. If you want to find out more about what's coming to your local areas, we've got a little website called MasonicConferences.com, which features most of the conferences that we know of, or if I've heard of it, then I've got links to it there. So whether that's South Pasadena or Masonicon Chicago, Camp Masonry, the original Masonicon, Texas Masonicon, the Double Eagle Con, AMD-related stuff, and even the Midwest Conference on Masonic Education for 2022, all the details are there, and it'll take you right back to the respective websites of those conferences. So if you're going to have a really cool conference and you want to put it up on this website, just shoot me an email, admin@wcypodcast.com, and we'll get it up here totally free, just a little service we do for the craft. So check it out. And if you're looking for somebody to speak at your special event, regardless of whether it's a con or maybe it's a one-night education thing, head on over to MasonicInstruction.com, where we've got a listing of different speakers and their topics all there for you to check out as well. So I know it's a lot of stuff. I'm talking about places and resources, but I'm hoping that you guys out there who are active in Freemasonry and in your lodges and looking for great things to do can utilize some of these resources. Don't forget about them. They're out there for you. And this is made possible through, of course, WCY Media and the generous support of Right Worshipful Brother Alex G. Powers, who helped me out with this one. He also helped me out with MasonicConferences.com. So, yeah, just want to say thanks to Right Worshipful Alex for that. And, of course, all of you out there, check out these resources. I'll have links to them in the show notes for you to really dig in. Recently, we had the Grand Lodge sessions for Illinois, and there's sessions going on for a lot of places around the United States right now as the year starts to come to a close. One of the things that often happens while I'm in Springfield, Illinois, is I go to Prairie Archives and I check out all of their books and things, and they had a stack of the Builder magazines. Now, the Builder magazine is an interesting publication that was started, I believe, by Brother Joseph Fort Newton as a national research organization. But there was a publication that came out and started again in 1915 and went for several years. The entire collection of the Builder magazine is on archive.org. The issue with the uploads that are there, though, is that there are no images, it's not color, and you're only getting the text that have been stripped from the pages. While I was at Prairie Archives in Springfield, Illinois, I came across a massive stack, like 30 or 40 issues of the magazine, and I decided to go ahead and scan these in with full-color, high-res images as PDFs that'll be OCR and searchable. I'm working on those now. I'm going to actually take those and I'm going to upload them as a member benefit to the Illinois Lodge of Research. I was asked if I would consider uploading them to the archive.org, but the thing is that I don't want to. Why? Because this is something that I did for the Illinois Lodge of Research out of my own pocket, and so that's where I'm going to upload them as a resource for the members. If you're interested in checking those out, they will be available soon. I have scanned 5 or 6 issues. I'm still working through them, and they take a little bit of time, but they'll be up there in the members section under the builders is where I'm going to put them. If you head on over to IllinoisLodgeofResearch.org, you can check out how to join. Yeah, big money spender there. Joining is $10 whole. So if you're interested, check it out. But for your first educational piece today, I wanted to actually read from the Builder magazine. What am I going to read? Why don't we start from the beginning? This is the January 1915, Volume 1, Number 1. The Builder magazine, the National Masonic Research Society, a foreword by Joseph Fort Newton. So, let's check this out and see where this was initially looking to go as a national research organization for Freemasonry by the ever-prolific Joseph Fort Newton. Under the sign of the square and compasses, emblems as eloquent as they are ancient, the builder takes up its labors for the advancement of Freemasonry, with malice toward no man, no party, no church, but with a sincere and hearty goodwill toward all its fellow workers in the search for truth and the service of humanity. Obviously, it is fitting in this initial issue that a statement be made as to the society of which this journal is a spokesman, its purpose, its spirit, its ideals, and the designs on its trestle board. So enthusiastic, so remarkable, indeed, has been the response from all over the country to the suggested organization of a National Masonic Research Society that there is no longer any doubt that such a movement is needed, and that it has a fruitful and far-reaching service to render to the order. Surely he is a poor prophet, and no poet at all, who does not see that this society, as now organized and working, can easily be made a factor of moment in the life and progress of Masonry in all its rites and activities, and if we give ourselves to it with earnestness, the day of its founding will be looked back upon as one of the significant dates in the recent history of the craft. Some things that need to be set down plainly, by way of preface, in behalf of a frank and full understanding. Let it be said once and for all that this movement has back of it no motive of personal aggrandizement, much less of pecuniary profit. Instead of trying to make money out of Masonry, the founders of this society are putting time, money, and energy into it, thinking little and caring less of any returns other than to find the truth and tell it. They have no axe to grind, no vanity to vent, no fad to air. Were it possible, they would prefer to remain unnamed and be known only by their work, like the old cathedral builders whose labors live by whose names are lost. Their solitary aim is to diffuse Masonic light and understanding, and thus to extend the influence and power of the greatest order of men upon earth. That is to say, they refuse to think of Masonry as a mere collection of social and faintly beneficent clubs, and they regard such a view of it as a pitiful apostasy from the faith of our fathers. They believe that Masonry is a form of the divine life upon earth, an order of men initiated, sworn, and trained to make righteousness, sweet reasonableness, and the will of God prevail. They see in it latent powers and possibilities, as yet unguessed, still less realized, a great liberalizing and humanizing fraternity whose mission is to soften prejudice, to refine thought and sympathy and service, and so help to prepare the race for a nobler manhood and a juster and more merciful social order. Hence their honorable ambition for its service, not only by interpreting it to the world at large, but by the broadening and deepening the interest of Masons themselves in the faith, philosophy, history, and practical aims of their fraternity. Surely, such a labor may well appeal to men who would fain serve their fellows and do a little good before they die. Instead of being a private enterprise, this movement has the official sanction and blessing of the Grand Lodge of Iowa, and is in fact an outgrowth of the labors of that grand body in training its young men to be intelligent and capable Masons. What the endorsement of such a plan by the Grand Lodge of Iowa means in the Masonic world is at once evident, as witness these words by Sir Chedwode Crawley, of whose distinguished service to Masonic scholarship in England no student needs to be told. Quote, "Let me begin by expressing my deep satisfaction that the Grand Lodge of Iowa has extended its sanction to Masonic research by the appointment of so influential and capable a committee as that indicated in your letter. The adoption of such a plan by any Grand Lodge would have secured warm approval from all brethren concerned for the welfare of the craft, but there is peculiar fitness in its adoption by the Grand Lodge of Iowa. For more than a generation we have been accustomed to see the Grand Lodge of Iowa leading the van in the cultivation of the literature of Freemasonry." End quote. Those words speak high and sincere tribute, but it is richly deserved and abundantly justified by the record. 75 years ago, the library of the Grand Lodge of Iowa, perhaps the greatest of its kind in the world, was founded by the late Theodore Sutton Parvin, whose long and busy life was devoted with the industry only equaled by his great ability to the cause of Masonic light and learning. Today, that noble library stands as his monument and memorial, its doors opened and its fabulous treasures accessible to all who seek further light in Masonry. Having so splendid a tradition and so inspiring an example, it is only natural that Iowa Masons should make their library the center of enthusiasm and activity for the education of the craft, whereof detailed report may be read in the proceedings of their Grand Lodge. More recently, by force of necessity, new emphasis has been added to the study of Masonry, and the reason is not far to seek. Time was, and not so long ago, when it required courage for a man to be a Mason. Feeling against the order was intense, often fanatical, and its innocent secrets were imagined by the ignorant or malicious to hide some dark design. How different it is now when the order is everywhere held in honor, and justly so, for the benignity of its spirit and the nobility of its principles. No wonder its temple gates are thronged with elect young men, eager to enter its ancient fellowship. But those young men must know what Masonry is, whence it came, and what it cost in the sacrifice of brave men, and what it is trying to do in the world. Otherwise, they cannot realize in what a benign tradition they stand, much less be able to give a reason for their faith. Every argument in favor of any kind of education has equal force in behalf of the education of young Masons in the truths of Masonry. So, and only so, can they ever hope to know what the ritual really means and what high and haunting beauties lie hidden in its emblems. Finding in this necessity an open door of opportunity, the Grand Lodge of Iowa set about through its Committee on Masonic Research to work out a well-planned practical program of method, testing it by facts and results. By natural logic, the fruits of that labor suggested a national movement toward the same end, which has now taken form in this society. While it thus had its origin in Iowa, as the result of actual experience, it is no longer confined to Iowa, but invites the interest and aid of every Grand Lodge in the country, and the Masonic students of every rank and right, offering them in this journal a medium for closer fellowship and a form of frank, free, and fraternal discussion of every possible aspect of Masonry. There is no need that anyone make argument to prove that such a movement as this is Masonic. It is in accord with the oldest traditions of the order. We turn to the old charges, the titled deeds of Masonry, and a part of its earliest ritual. We learn that the craft lodges of the olden time were in fact schools, in which young men studied not only the technical laws of building, but the 7 sciences and the history and symbolism of the order as well. Apprentices were selected as much for their mental capacity as for bodily agility, and such as betrayed no aptitude for the intellectual aims of the craft were allowed to go back to the guilds and work as quote-unquote rough masons. No young man during his term as an apprentice was permitted to keep late hours unless he did so in study, which shall be deemed a sufficient excuse, as an old charge relates. Truth to tell, we have much yet to learn from the old craft Masonry, and especially in the matter of training young Masons. For one thing, they recite a brief history of the craft to the candidate at the time of his initiation as an entered apprentice, not leaving him bewildered, as we too often do, knowing nothing of a truly great and heroic history. No doubt the history so recited, as we have it in the old charges, was sometimes fantastic and far from the fact. Nonetheless, the principle was right, and had that wise custom been continued, there would have been less occasion for Gould to say what is only too true, that Masons know less about the history of their own order than the men of any other fraternity. Harking back to that old wise custom, the Grand Lodge of Iowa has had a brief story and interpretation of Masonry written, a copy of which is to be given to each of its initiates on the night of his raising. Masonic research, as we now use the phrase, may almost be said to have begun with Findel, albeit good work had been done before his day. Still, his History of Freemasonry was one of the very first books of the right kind and did much to put the craft in the path of authentic learning. Others followed, both abroad and in this country: Pike, Fort, Mackey, Drummond, Parvin, to name but a few among us. And their work, which met the little response, was nobly prophetic. An example in point was the brief but brilliant career of the American Review of Freemasonry, edited by Mackey. It began in 1858, ran 2 years, and died for lack of adequate support. In his valedictory, Dr. Mackey said, quote, "It was an experiment, commenced with a view of ascertaining how far a Masonic magazine of a very elevated character would be sustained by the craft in this country. For 2 years this experiment had been made, and it is plain that the Quarterly was in advance of the Masonic age. Doubtless it was supported better than such a work would have been 20 years ago, but not so well as a similar one will be in 10 years hence. For the literary character of the order is improving. The editor feels some satisfaction in believing that work, during its brief existence, has done no little in hastening that improvement." End quote. Truly, that was a brave optimism, as befitted a pioneer, and its vision has been fulfilled by the facts. By the same token, we, who live in a day made better by the labors of such men, dare not be less courageous, lest we be found unworthy of our fathers. The men who wrote for the Review have now passed to where beyond these voices there is peace, but their work remains. One has only to open its yellow pages to read the articles of Pike on the mysteries, and the essays of Mackey on symbolism, which afterward formed the chapters of his book in exposition of the symbolism of Freemasonry, written in a style which may well be a model of lucidity. Those men did not fail. They were sowers who did their work and trusted the far-off harvest of years. Remembering their faith, their sacrifice, their high devotion, we would build on their foundations, linking the past with a greater tomorrow. We inherit the past, we create the future. Since the days of the Review, much has been done, especially by the great research lodges of England, and most of all by the Couture Coronati Lodge of London, to whose labors we owe an incalculable debt. As in religious scholarship, so in Masonry, the higher criticism has come and done its much-needed work, testing documents, sifting evidence, unearthing buried treasure, and applying to Masonry the approved methods of historical study. Of necessity, the voluminous process of this long investigation are known only to the diligent student, who has had the time to taste to follow its revealing labors. Just as in the field of biblical criticism, the real results achieved are looked upon, are locked up, for the most part, in huge volumes read by only a few. Here, the National Research may render a vital service to the order, not only by encouraging further original investigation, but also, and not one with less important, by interpreting to the craft at large the net results of Masonic scholarship. What Renan called the grand curiosity must never be allowed to sleep, and this society will do all within its power to extend the area of knowledge, bringing new facts to light wherever they are to be found. The field is rich, the labor is fascinating. What has been done only reveals how much remains to be done, while it shows us how to go about it. At the same time, the humblest member of the craft, toiling in office and shop, at the forge and on the farm, is entitled to know the best that has been thought and the latest fact discovered by the greatest Masonic scholar. Therefore, this society seeks to unite the work of the investigator with that of the interpreter, and, to that end, it proposes, first, the publication of a journal devoted to the study and interpretation of the history, philosophy, symbolism, and purposes of the various rites, orders, and degrees of Freemasonry. Second, the publication from time to time of books, pamphlets, and lectures on Masonic subjects, and the collection, preservation, and indexing of all material of value to Masonic students. Third, the arrangement and publication of courses of Masonic study for lodges or groups of students, the promotion and supervision, when it is desired, of meetings of Masons for Masonic study and discussion, and ultimately the foundation and maintenance of a Bureau of Masonic Lectures. Fourth, the compilation of lists of names of Masonic students interested in different lines of Masonic study or activity, for the stimulation and guidance of Masonic intercourse, and it may be added, for the aid of a Masonic journal when special articles are desired. Fifth, the collection and circulation of data bearing upon distinct Masonic activities, such as plans and specifications for different kinds of Masonic buildings, systems of financing of Masonic projects, the results of practical experience upon various phases of Masonic charity, and the like. Sixth, the foundation and management of funds for the financial aid of Masonic students in specific fields of Masonic research, in the form of a fellowship. It may be whereby a young man, say of the Acacia fraternity, trained for such studies in a university, may be set to work on some period or problem in Masonic history, and thus render a permanent service to the craft. By endowing a fellowship in the society, a man of wealth who has long had it in mind to do something for Masonry can leave a living legacy which will go on doing good after he passed away. Having thus indicated in what ways the society seeks to serve Freemasonry, it may not be amiss to point out how the order can make the society effective for the high end for which it was founded. First of all, every Mason who becomes a member of the society adds, by so much, to its usefulness and power. The time has come when every Grand Lodge should have a committee on Masonic research or Masonic education, if they choose so to name it. And such committees, by cooperating with the society, may have access to every resource at its command. Also, the various groups of Masonic students, of which there are many in different parts of the country, ought by all means to work with the society, making use of its journal not only for mutual instruction and inspiration, the better to share the results of their researches with all the craft. Such is the spirit and ideal of this society, and if to realize it at all at once is denied us, surely it means much to set it before us, working the while to make it come true. Manifestly, here is a practical program which, if worked out, will mean a new era in the history of Freemasonry, opening avenues of opportunity and enterprise to which no one can set a limit. It differs from other undertakings of a like kind, chiefly in that, instead of being confined to a few, it seeks to enlist the whole fraternity, uniting scattered effort in behalf of Masonic education into a magnificent movement for the advance of the order, which has no other purpose than the present and future upbuilding of humanity. Finally, it only remains for yea editor to state, from his point of view, what the spirit and the policy of the Builder should be. As its name indicates, this journal for the Masonic student, like the society which it represents, is by its very genius constructive and in no sense iconoclastic, its sole object being to build up, never to tear down. Anybody can destroy, even a cow can trample a lily with which the warm earth, fertilizing sun, and the soft witchery of summer air have united to grow. Speaking for himself, the editor holds it to be self-evident that the only way to overthrow error and unreason is to tell the simple truth. Tell it simply, vividly, without fear, and without resting in love of God and love of man. Other ways to victory there is none, and there never will be. Masonry is friendship, and if its benign influence is to prevail upon the earth, it must labor in a spirit of will toward all men, seeking not to destroy its enemies, but to win them to the light and dignity of truth. Nothing is gained by denunciation, everything is ruined by hate. Love is the one mighty builder, and they toil in vain who build upon any other foundation. Our task is to let in the light. Let in all the light. Let the light all the way in, assured that when the light of the truth shines, darkness will disappear, and with it all the vile and slimy things that hide within its shadows. There is no might like the might of truth, and once the temple of Masonry is made to stand in the sunlight where all men can see its beauty, it will command the homage of all who love their race. Therefore, the builder will be positive but not dogmatic, open-minded but never indifferent, considerate of all but absolutely uncompromising in respect of the principles of Freemasonry, seeking the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Critical it must be, since criticism, as Arnold defined it, is appreciation estimate, quote, cooperation in the search for truth, end quote. Those who write for these pages may expect to have their theories put to the test of reason and fact in the open forum of debate, which is what the seeker after truth most desires. Let the discussion be frank, free, and thorough. All that the editor asks is that it be fraternal in spirit, each one keeping an open mind and a kind heart towards all his comrades in this great quest. For the rest, the editor asks pardon for having taken so much time and space, but it seemed appropriate to exhibit in some detail the designs of the society, the faith in which it is founded, and the spirit in which it works. Hereafter, his duty will be much like that of the toastmaster presiding over the feast, introducing the speakers with occasional interludes of comment, his one desire being to encourage a spirit of fraternal fellowship and intellectual hospitality, of genial, joyous goodwill, which, since the far-off days of the old Regius poem, has been the reigning genius wherever Masons meet. Thus ends the foreword by Joseph Fort Newton in the National Masonic Research Society, known as the Builder magazine, first published January 1915, Volume 1, Number 1. Again, I will put a link back to the entire archive of the Builder magazine, which is available on archive.org. Again, these are going to be just the words, however, not the actual magazine scans, which I am working on and will be available on the Illinois Lodge of Research website And perhaps, there may be some other great scans out there or whatever, but this is just my little effort to contribute in my own way to the Illinois Lodge of Research. What was interesting in this is rather one of these poetic type things. We speak very flowery and vividly in a lot of Masonic writings. We're painting pictures with words. And here Joseph Fort Newton does exactly what he does in all of his writing, in that he inspires with these kind of wordy masterpieces that one could almost imagine each word hitting a canvas as paint and painting a beautiful image to inspire the mind of the reader. There have been several National Masonic magazines, whether they were started to accomplish this aim of being a National Masonic magazine, as this one had been, The Builder. But there are also others like The Square and Compass, like Masonic World, which was, of course, Ray Denslow, and there were a few others as well. Primarily, I think what's been interesting is to note that it's almost a non-existent thing today, because every single Masonic publication out there is essentially global since the internet has come around for us. Inasmuch, right, like Illinois, we just now started our Masonic education publication. Issue 3 just came out, and we attempt to do very much the similar things. We're promoting Masonic ideals, putting really interesting articles in there, and I guess the only difference is that a lot of the publications that come out today are limited in content, and that may be more to do with the average person's ability to make its way through a magazine than an actual challenge of trying to find content, because we all know there's tons and tons of content out there. I asked all of you before, would you be interested in a Masonic magazine from WCY? I got an overwhelming yes, but also at the same time, maybe not a print magazine, or maybe bring it about in a different way, flipboards or something else to interact with it a little bit differently than just flipping pages. I will say I have no news on that front. I'm inclined at this time to just continue putting together the Lyceum, which is the magazine that I do for the Illinois Masonic Education Committee and the Brothers of Illinois. That's kind of where I'm at with that. But let's ask. I would really love to know what your favorite Masonic publication of all time is. Now, we've talked about the Square and Compass, we've talked about the Builder, there's SoCal Fraternal Review, there was the Working Tools, Living Stones, of course the Lyceum, but there's all kinds of great Masonic publications out there, and I'm just interested in knowing, what's your favorite? Is it Short Talk Bulletin? Is it MSA stuff? Was it the Builder? I'd love to hear your responses in this week's Craftsman Plus. We'll put that question right there. I look forward to reading your replies.
You have made your journey to the East. Planning for this milestone consumed you. It saturated your life. Thoughts of budgets and programs bloated your brain until there was room for nothing else. And oh yes, there was that big part you had to memorize. Then you got there. You brought those programs to life. You managed the budget. You were gut punched by the unexpected. You punched back. You won. Now your year is coming to an end. Where, you wonder, did the time go? It all went by so quickly. Suddenly, you realize you are traveling near light speed toward the event horizon, the point of no return, of the great black hole of Freemasonry, life after being master of your lodge. Maybe it doesn't hit you right away. Oh, those first few weeks after your term is over, that sweet era when the responsibility void hits, when the burdens of leadership rest on someone else's shoulders, when you get to go to meetings, plan nothing, do nothing, and wear that sporty new past master's apron, is a nirvana reserved for a precious few, the newly minted junior past master. But it's an illusion. You eventually realize you've been sucked into the great void. Oblivion awaits. You can't sit in the north heckling the ritual performance forever. You can only take so much listening to debates about the menu at the next dinner, reading of the minutes, and grousing about the outrageous bill to fix the air conditioner. You realize they can do all of this without you. Weeks ago, you were the most important guy in the lodge. Now you are, by your standard, irrelevant. You're not even the top dog of all the past masters. You're at the bottom of the barrel. And like anything that reaches singularity in a black hole, you disappear. Experience shows us it happens to many, possibly the majority of past masters. They gradually stop coming to meetings, fade away, and leave us wondering whatever happened to them. As you try to fight this trend, instead of whence came you, a new question pops up. Whence go you? Or more simply, now what? The fact is, most of us don't want to sit around doing nothing. We need relevance, something to do, a goal, a project, a responsibility. Part of your planning as you approach the East should be to figure out what you will do when it's all over. Your lodge has many needs you can fill. Maybe it needs a new lodge education officer, an appointed office filled, a mentor for new initiates, a lodge historian, someone to take the helm of a civic project, or, God forbid, a new secretary. There are also appendant bodies to consider. The York and Scottish Rites especially offer more opportunities for Masonic education, fellowship, or community service. Grand Lodge committees always need staffing. You might even put together an article for the Midnight Freemasons or one of your state or local Masonic publications. Whatever you do, vow to stay active, and the activities you choose should include those that keep you coming back to the foundation of our fraternity, your lodge. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
All right, our thanks goes out to illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison, who is going to be at the Double Eagle Con on December 18th, 2021. Make sure you come out to see him. He's got that great presentation on Cowles and Denslow. It's going to be awesome. I think you guys will really enjoy it. Now, this particular piece was very poignant because I think for anybody who has gone through the East has definitely experienced this. Where to go, what to do. And all I can say is echo what Steve said. Find what drives you for the fraternity and follow that. Find out where you can apply your expertise and dive in. Now, sometimes that takes a little bit of searching. Maybe it's more in an appendant body, or maybe it's in your own home lodge again, doing something as simple as showing up an hour early to set up the lodge. What is your niche or your niche in Freemasonry that keeps you coming back? Find that and do it. You know, for me, I love pretty much all aspects of Freemasonry. And so for that, I'm always working for the fraternity for a better tomorrow for all of humanity. That's really my mission. I believe that Freemasonry holds teachings and tenets and virtues that will bring about a better tomorrow for all of humanity. And that's why I believe in Freemasonry so much. So what better thing can I do than put together a podcast and broadcast it to the world in the hopes of making that difference? That's what I do. There is no true small thing that we're doing. We're all cogs in the machine, making it work and making lives better because of what we do. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on what keep you coming back to Lodge. That's our Craftsman Plus question number 2 for this week. Now we've got another segment as we've been continuing these pieces from some great brothers who have graciously given us some awesome content for the podcast. This next segment is from Matt Gallagher. And you all have heard him over the last few months talk about various concepts within Freemasonry that have really boiled down, in a sense, the ideas that Freemasonry proposes and how those are utilized today in a practical sense. So last week you heard the first segment, which is actually an installment from his book, Practical Freemasonry, which is available right now. You can get on Amazon. We have a link to that book in the show notes. I'll add it to the bookshop on the website as well, so you can find it quickly there. But we've got one more segment from Brother Gallagher, and I'd like to dive into that right now. Let's take a listen.
The 5 Orders of Architecture, an excerpt from Practical Freemasonry, a new book on Masonic symbolism by me, Matt Gallagher. If there's one thing that doesn't get enough credit in Freemasonry, it's the benefit of dry, repetitive memory work. A couple of years ago, in a haughty attempt to learn the Middle Chamber lecture, I recorded myself reading the non-secretive bits, and would play them back to myself on walks. After about the 40-second replay of the same section, some interesting things came to me about the 5 Orders, a section that has always confused me in the past. Most things in the Middle Chamber lecture make a kind of obvious sense. Learn the 7 liberal arts and sciences if you want to be educated. The 5 senses are miracles. The human eye, which Warren Ellis once described as a full-color 3D camera with a panoramic peripheral lens using only jelly and water, is so non-random and useful, it just might support the concept of intelligent design. But then there's this other bit in there about the 5 Orders of Architecture. I get that our entire philosophy is built around the metaphor of architecture, so it's a good idea to toss it in the lectures somewhere, but we spend a suspicious amount of time describing these things. Why? I had 2 thoughts. The first was about our several stations in life from the plum education. It seemed to me that these pillars, the Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite, perfectly reflected man's narrative path through life. The Tuscan, being plain and unadorned, is a man as a child. He is in his simplest and most pure form. The Doric, having been modeled off the figure of a strong, robust man, represents a young man in the prime of his life. This is a time historically when a young man would go to war and learn the related arts involved, as well as start out in their chosen profession. To me, it symbolizes a young man just out of school and ready to explore adulthood. The Ionic, based on the form of a woman, represents partnership and marriage, when a man decides to settle down and look toward the future, building a life with his partner. The Corinthian, a masterpiece of art, represents a man's ultimate goal to fulfill his purpose in life and create his own masterwork. A man in his late 30s and 40s is usually a man over the insecure parts of his life. He knows his talents, knows his job, and has gathered the resources and, if he is brave enough, to answer the call to realize his authentic self. The Composite, a combination of the Corinthian and the Ionic, represents the child, a combination of the mother and father. That final elixir with which a man returns home in his own hero's journey, that gift he gives to the world, is his child, to grab the baton, carry on, and continue to improve the world. As a man who wishes to be moral and upstanding, the plum instructs us that we must be moral in all these different epochs of our lives. Deathbed confessions cannot make up for a lifetime of immorality. Crooked business dealings are not balanced out by being a great dad. Again, though, how do we be moral? How do we know how to do the right thing? The answer may be found in my second thoughts on the orders. One thing about Freemasonry I learned pretty early on, and is mentioned in the Fellowcraft degree, is that when Masons use the word Freemasonry, they mean geometry. And when they say geometry, they mean morality. And from the lessons of the Common Gavel, we know that a stone is a metaphor for ourselves or a mortal soul, and that a building is essentially a divine plan, but also a social structure, and how we fit into it, creating a sort of single harmonious being. The orders section begins in the following way. By order in architecture, it is meant a system of all the members, proportions, and ornaments of columns and pilasters, or it is a regular arrangement of the projecting parts of a building, which united with those of a column, form a beautiful, perfect, and complete whole. Let's translate the symbolism of this. By order in morality, it is meant a system of all the reason, ethics, and virtues of a moral school, or it is a regular arrangement of the self or society, which, united with a school of morality, forms a beautiful, perfect, and complete whole. If you accept this translation, and let's just say for a second that you do, then what it's saying is that you can't be expected to support yourself or society unless it's grounded in a logical, reasonable system of morality. Things like, "It's my truth," or "I do what feels right in my heart, don't cut it," and are the architectural equivalent of building a castle on a swamp. Freemasonry makes no secret of the fact that you should get your sense of morality from your deity and religion, but anyone who's ever had a problem knows that while religion certainly provides a font of wisdom and guidance, it has a hard time addressing specific problems. So I contend that while Freemasonry has no official opinion on the nature of right and wrong, except that there is such a thing as right and wrong, Freemasonry does have opinions on what philosophical schools are best at getting you there. And these are spelled out in the 5 orders of architecture. To refresh your memory, the 5 orders are the Tuscan, the Doric, the Ionic, the Corinthian, and the Composite. And while all 5 are described in Freemasonry, it is the middle 3, those first created by the Greeks, the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, rather than the Roman columns, the Tuscan and Composite, that Masons most revere. The rationale for this is that the Greek columns were original, unique works, whereas the Roman columns were derived from the Greeks, those copycats. Hence, it is to the Greeks and not the Romans we are indebted for what is great, judicious, and distinct in architecture. That's some mean shade being thrown on the Romans, but why is this point even made? Each order of architecture bears a striking similarity to 5 predominant schools of Western philosophy. The Tuscan represents the philosophy of Roman Stoicism. Originating in Greece, Stoicism was most popular in Rome and famously practiced by Marcus Aurelius. As a philosophy, it is not unlike Buddhism, believing that the secret to a good, happy life is to curb your desires, live a simple life of tranquility, and be happy with what you have. This parallels nicely with the Tuscan, which is meant to be a modest column for solemn buildings where ornamentation would be superfluous, and like Roman Stoicism, was derived from Greek works, namely the Doric, and presented in its simplest form. There are a lot of personal benefits to approaching the world with a Stoic's view. The less you care about hot-button issues like politics, for instance, the less stressed you will feel and the more friends you will keep on social media. Now take note, caring about something less does not mean being less concerned about an issue. Being concerned means you are paying attention to something and you are seeking solutions that improve the situation. Caring, in this sense, is about investing your ego or your sense of self in an issue. If you view yourself as strongly pro-life, for instance, pro-choice arguments will be absorbed not as a different idea, but an attack on your very identity. And an attack on your identity will be registered by your instinctive brain as an attack on your life. This will cause you to reject any opposing view as an offense to your life, and clutch any aligning view as a shield, no matter how paper-thin it may be. Being able to detach yourself from your beliefs and recognizing that you and your ideas are 2 separate things, the latter of which can be changed when necessary, will not only keep your anxiety down, but it will better enable you to reason and solve problems. The Doric represents the original philosophy of Greek Stoicism, and can be viewed similarly to other Greek philosophies of the time, like skepticism and cynicism, which we could throw under the umbrella of the Doric, in that it didn't strive to improve through changing man's nature or discovering the unknown. It accepted the world as it is, and believed that unhappiness only came about when reality crashed headlong into surprise. It was thus the duty of the Stoic to remain strong, accept life for what it is rather than what you want it to be, and press on. It is a philosophy that is neatly summed up by Churchill when he said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." Man, the Stoics believed, had the inner strength to overcome their troubles, adhering to the logos, or divine structure which connects all people, through the adherence to the 4 cardinal virtues of wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. Man cannot improve the world. Man can improve himself, and that will improve the world. The parallels to the Doric, the best proportioned and sturdiest of the orders, modeled off the form of a robust male, are obvious. What is the difference between Roman and Greek Stoicism, and why should we follow the Greek? I don't mean to say that we must cast aside Marcus and his friends to the philosophical trash heap. Roman society was much more community-based, being a rather large empire with a complex political structure. The need to work together as one harmonious unit is reflected in their philosophies. Greek philosophy seems to lean more towards rugged individualism. Whereas Roman Stoicism focuses on the what, Greek Stoicism focuses on the why. What you want for your life depends on your needs and tastes, but the why is something that interests most philosophical Freemasons. The Corinthian most closely aligns with the Epicurean school, which posits that the best things in life are those that bring the most pleasure. This was not meant in the hedonistic sense, rather a utilitarian one in which costs and benefits are weighed and the right is that which creates the highest amount of overall happiness. As beauty is dependent on its evoking of uplifting joy, the parallel is obvious. In modern times, this is called utilitarianism. Making choices for the greater good of the majority is why Spock sacrifices himself to save the Enterprise in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It's why Gandalf took the leap in Fellowship of the Rings and Obi-Wan took a dive in the Death Star so Luke and company could get away. Utilitarianism doesn't always mean someone has to die, of course. Sharing a pizza, instead of wolfing down every slice holed up in the bathroom, even if that's what you really want to do, is a form of utilitarianism. It's not always fun, and practitioners are prone to martyrdom, but it is usually pretty defensible. Bringing happiness and satisfaction is a great thing. The composite aligns well with the philosophy of Via Romana, or the Roman Way, a constructed school of philosophy popular in late Rome. It was not so much a school of reason as it was a declaration that certain values are superior and should be sought. As the composite is an amalgam of previous orders, so too is Via Romana an amalgam or conclusion of previous schools of philosophy. In a sense, Via Romana can still be found in modern times. For example, the 12 points of Scout Law, of being trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, or any other system typically taught to children that clearly spells out the way we should be, can be viewed as Via Romana, though Via Romana was considerably more robust. Via Romana consisted of 15 personal virtues: spiritual authority, humor, mercy, dignity, tenacity, frugalness, gravity, respectability, humanity, industriousness, dutifulness, prudence, wholesomeness, sternness, and truthfulness, and 26 public virtues of a society: abundance, equity, remembrance, clemency, concord, happiness, confidence, fortune, spirit of Rome, think the American way, mirth, justice, joy, liberality, freedom, nobility, wealth, endurance, peace, piety, providence, modesty, safety, security, hope, fertility, and courage. Wow, that's a lot. But let's face it, thinking is hard, especially when it's accompanied by worrying and anxiety. Human beings are frankly not well equipped to reason their way to good choices. You may not have the time and attention to work out why being loyal is better than being only out for number one, or why obedience is better than independence. These can be hard thoughts. But to align yourself to a code because you know that those who live by that code are great people and seem reasonably well off is frankly good enough. Because in the end, it's less important that you have good thoughts and intentions, and more important that you do good. The Ionic, which I purposely saved until last, is described specifically as a mean order between the Doric and Corinthian. This can be viewed as representing Aristotle's Nicomachean ethics, also known as virtue ethics, which demonstrates that the ideal action is that which is derived from the medium virtue of two vices. For instance, courage is the median between foolhardiness and cowardice. Freemasonry says it is to the Greeks and not the Romans to whom we are indebted for everything good and judicious in life. Thus it is to the Greek schools and not the Roman to which we are indebted for our reason and ethics, as unlike Stoicism and Via Romana, which were more like ways of living, the Greek schools were a process of reason. Freemasonry is founded on a belief that goodness is a matter of circumspection and practice. There is no magical system or secret that levels you up, rather a constant reminder to yourself to think about why the things that you do are good, true, wise, and promote beauty. The conclusion I draw from this is that goodness is not just a matter of accepting what you cannot change, or having principles or directions you receive from a book or an authority. Being what others want you to be, rather than our natural, greedy, selfish selves, is a great direction for a child, but as a man you should go deeper. You need to think about the why. You need systems to guide you. You need a methodology so you can be assured that your choices are not just manifestations of your selfish desires, but are rooted in reason, and take account of observable realities and consider the needs of the many. This has been Matt Gallagher for the Whence Came You podcast.
Well, our thanks goes out, of course, to Brother Matt Gallagher for his work on practical Freemasonry, and in particular, this great segment. I know it was a little bit longer, but I didn't want to split it into a couple pieces because I think it presents itself really well all together. So this work on the 5 orders of architecture, really great stuff. Again, as always, I want to ask you, if you're interested in this and this really hit home for you, check out his website, practicalfreemasonry.com. Check out the new book, links again in the show notes. And to Brother Matt, thank you so much for your work in the quarries. Now that's it for this week. I want to thank all our producers, fellows, contributors, legacy partners for assisting us in bringing this program to the world, bringing Masonic education first and foremost to the rising to the top, and for everybody out there who listens every week, who shares our videos, all of those things. And again, all of the links to everything we talked about this week will be in the show notes. I want to thank you all very much for joining us this week on the Whence Came You podcast. So until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.